Welcome everybody to the Thursday evening. With me in the show is a very good and old friend of Bitcoin Live, and it's nice to have you back on, Scott. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while, but it's good to be back.
Yeah, so let's start at the beginning. How have you been, and where have you been?
Yeah. I mean, I've been good. I've been working a lot more on my day job and just doing my stuff. But I do want to get back into the ring of things and get creating content again, and get the channel going again. I have something that I've been working on for a while. I just wanted to, I guess, get it right. I'm doing more of a focus, I guess, lately on like bigger, longer topics rather than like little short videos. So the next thing I'm going to be posting is the cost of centralization. So I mean, I did a paper on this, but essentially just a real 30-second pitch of what it's going to be about is when you use USDC and USDT, the two largest stablecoins, and pretty much most of the other ones at this point, they all have blacklists. So they'll ban certain addresses, they'll take all their funds, they'll freeze them. There's over 1,000 already on USDT and over 150, I believe, on USDC. I haven't checked in the last like week or two, so that could have changed. But the issue there is, well, beyond the fact that all of your money can be taken away from you at any moment, is that to check these blacklists with every single transaction costs you more money, because they're doing this at a level on, like, they're doing this at the core level, in like they're doing this on the blockchain, essentially, is what I mean to say. So it's costing you more gas fees to actually make these transactions.
Wow.
So I've already published the paper and everyone can go and check that out. It's just called The Cost of Centralization. But essentially it's between 10 to 30 cents more per transaction. So while that's small, like, if you're doing 5 transactions a month, obviously that's not a big deal. But at a large scale, it's millions of dollars that us as the users are taking on, paying on behalf of the company that is censoring us and taking our money. So it's kind of like the bank charges you to take your money. And that is definitely not what people want. Again, it is a small fee on a case by case individual user basis, but as a whole, it's sort of like setting the precedent that it's okay for us to, charge you extra to censor you. And it's like, if people knew that that was the case, I don't think they would be as open to using these stable coins, because it's like, you're literally punishing me for picking your coin. So the alternative that I would suggest is DAI, DAI, because it doesn't have a blacklist. It's one of the only stable coins that does not. I'm sure there's many newer stable coins that I'm not aware of that might not have blacklists, or like, small cap ones. But in terms of like the top dogs, like billions and billions and billions of dollars, DAI is the only one that I'm currently aware of that is like open source, decentralized, no blacklist, checks off all the boxes.
And that's
They're
also
also,
one. Oh, go on.
I would just say they're also way over collateralized. So they have tons and tons of backing. Whereas if you look at like Tether's website, their transparency report tells you themselves, I believe it's 0.58% of cash reserves, because they do say it all plainly, but it's kind of tricky the way that they say it. It's like 80% of reserves, and then when that's broken down, it's only a tiny fraction of that. So then it's even smaller than what it looks like. And it's kind of worded confusingly, because some people are not totally aware of like, well, what's a T-bill, and how is that different from all these, how are all these things different, because it's all in the same category.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, Tether and USDC don't have very good backing. They punish you for using their coins. And yeah, so I mean, that's what I've been working on lately. And yeah, that'll be the next big thing. But I definitely think more people need to be aware of like why centralization is not for your benefit a lot of the times, and decentralization tends to lean towards a good direction. Obviously, not everything is perfect. You know, there's DAOs that are scams, like I think it was WonderFi or something like that. There's an Olympia DAO or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Not everything's perfect, but you know, there are well-established decentralized projects like DAI that are fairly good projects. So yeah.
And there are others that are being worked on, right? These sort of because you also have sort of these stable coins that are smart contracts, basically, that sort of balance themselves. Now, there's issues with that.
I'm very hesitant with those. So I previously did like a deep dive on all the different types of stable coins.
Interesting.
And my conclusion was the only ones that are good are crypto collateralized and like over collateralized crypto backed coins.
Oh, that's interesting.
The way that I would,
that was my other question, right? Because USDC and USDT are basically US Treasury bills, right? So and Treasury bills are, you know, very secure. But going forward, it's unclear how secure those Treasury bills really are, right? I mean, probably, you know, coming 10, 20 years, maybe they're still okay. But eventually, basically, America's broke, right? As is everybody else. Only they're the less, you know, less dirty shirt in the laundry. So but you're saying like stable coins that are backed with crypto, and then probably Bitcoin in particular.
So over collateralized crypto backed. And you mentioned algorithmic stablecoins.
Yeah.
I would say those are like the worst personally from my like studying, because every major high cap stablecoin that is an algorithmic stablecoin has like failed. It's depegged and then collapsed. Every major one. I'm sure there's new ones being built, and I'm not going to say that they're a scam or anything, because like you never know. But all of the like things that we've looked at in the past that have been big have failed. I've covered many of these in my previous videos when I went through all of this. Some obvious examples are like Terra Luna is probably the largest one. Previously, before that, there was Iron Finance, which was heavily promoted by Mark Cuban. And 3 days after he posted about it, it went to zero. And, you know, maybe there's a way to do it right. But the problem is that with algorithmic stablecoins, most of the time, there is always the potential that they could completely fail. And if the timing doesn't work out or something happens, that can happen. That's not really a lot of other coins. Like if you're over collateralized, that shouldn't really be an issue. But yeah, I find that relying on community incentive to keep a stablecoin stable is not really, it's not reliable enough. And like you could call it decentralized because you are just relying on a community. But the problem there is like, should you invest, you know, your life savings on just hoping that this community is going to keep this thing going? And it's like, if the community sees that it's not working, they're going to leave as well, which, you know, we saw with many projects in the past. So I would say the safest from my perspective is crypto collateralized. And I'll caveat that by saying, however, you know, if crypto is tanking, obviously that creates some concerns there. But the reason that I would pick crypto collateralized over anything else is because if you're using a fiat-backed stablecoin like USDT, like USDC, you're not really in crypto, because you're really just you're still doing the fiat, like you're still doing everything the way that it was before. You're still pegged to how fiat is performing, and if fiat is being inflated heavily, or you know they're printing money and giving it away to every country, which they are doing.
And they are weaponized.
Yeah, and it's like, and that's all controlled by the Federal Reserve. Yeah. Crypto is not controlled by the Federal Reserve, mind you.
They're trying.
Yeah, mind you, you know, we're getting all these ETFs and stuff, and that's good for mass adoption and bringing the average person into the system. But however, it's also consolidating a lot of decentralized crypto in centralized hands. So yeah, they're definitely trying, but yeah, I think it makes sense to get away from that. If you're trying to, if you're just looking for a place to park your money, or you're just looking to like make some money on crypto, maybe it's not as important. But if your goal is like, I'm getting out of fiat because fiat is bad and crypto has improvements on fiat, and that's why I'm here, then it doesn't make sense to just get right back into fiat with the fiat stablecoin. So personally, me, I would say I want a crypto-backed stablecoin because I believe in crypto to be a solution to fiat. So I'm going to stick with that, like that ethos, and I'll go with DAI. And DAI is, as far as I can tell, the like best option because they actually have a backing. There's no issue if people start pulling out all their funds. Like that's not going to cause like some run on the bank where it just goes to zero. That shouldn't really be an issue. And because they don't have blacklists, it's open source, all these things make it like perfect for what you want in a coin. It's like just having cash. No one's going to be able to stop you from using it. You can use it anywhere, you can store it anywhere. There's no oversight. So that's kind of why I would lean in that direction. I can understand if there's some new algorithmic backed state community based stablecoin. I imagine though the reason that people would like that is because it's attached to like an APR. Like you want this because you get 10% return. Yeah. That's the main reason I would say people would go for that. If they didn't have that, there would really be no reason to just like go for that over DAI or something like that.
Well, I think it was Travis Kling who recently or a few weeks ago posted his sort of main thesis that this bull run will also be sort of energized or boosted by degens who sort of have no trust or belief in crypto itself, but think like there's massive gains to be had. So for those kind of people, it's like, crypto doesn't even mean anything. So for them,
I've got some friends in this camp. Yeah.
So fiat would for them be more trustworthy, and so fiat-backed stablecoin would be like.
Well, it's interesting because they still don't like fiat. They don't necessarily fully trust crypto, but they're at the point where they're like, I don't trust anything.
Yeah.
Everything is a risk. Let me just throw it all at like meme coins because I don't trust anything. So if I'm going to go down, I'm either going to make a ton of money or I'm going to go down with a ship.
Casino.
I have a lot of friends. Yeah, basically. I have a lot of friends who actually are making a lot of money on meme coins right now. But, I don't necessarily like endorse that, nor do I do that. But you can make money. And more importantly, I've got friends who have even said like, yeah, this is probably a Ponzi, but like I'm in early enough that I'll probably make money. And it's like, yeah, once we're at that point, we're probably that's a good signal that we're in a bull run. And while I don't advise investing in something that you don't think is legit, I've never said that you can't make money, but I don't recommend it because it's definitely not a good way to invest. Just from like a fundamentals of investing in general, not even in crypto, just obviously like you could invest in penny stocks and you could make millions on penny stocks. But do I recommend you invest in penny stocks? Probably not.
And it sort of raises the issue from like, what is money, right? Because we sort of use the term very loosely, and then people basically have no idea what money really is. And so when they think about fiat, they don't even know what fiat is, right? So for people in crypto know what fiat means, but it basically means by decree, but government decree. But money is actually also a store of value, a unit of count, an exchange of a medium of exchange. It's like a lot of things. It needs to be divisible. It needs to be this and that. And Bitcoin is, I believe, the closest thing to that we have right now. So I think you could also sort of skip the whole stablecoin issue, just going directly into Bitcoin itself, right?
But that's a great point. Yeah. And I mean, I said that in my video too. I honestly said like the only reason I would even consider DAI is like exit liquidity from my Bitcoin during a bull run. Otherwise, like there's no reason for me to be holding a stable coin. I fully am in the crypto ethos. I want Bitcoin. I want Ethereum. I have a few other coins now, but 95% of my money is in Bitcoin and Ethereum. I have a little bit of money in like Litecoin so I can like buy stuff, things like that. But I would say like 95% of my money is in Bitcoin and Ethereum still. So it's been quite a ride.
And I want to also give you a compliment, because I remember the last bull run, you basically called it spot on, like, when it was sort of the peak, and when you expected sort of the downward trend.
Unfortunately, I did not sell. I called it and I did not sell.
I have that same problem. When I make a good call, I usually don't listen to myself, so that's really annoying.
Yeah, I had that problem recently with Nvidia.
Oh,
Nvidia overnight jumped $100, and I had a call option for 800, but I got scared and I executed it like a week or two ago. I still made money, but it started going down a lot, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do this, and I still made profit, so it's not like. But now it's almost at 800, which is what I had said originally, and I could have made a lot more money, but. I wouldn't advise people to do calls. It's very stressful. Even though I make more money in like an hour from just holding my crypto than I'll ever make from a call, like it's still so stressful knowing that you could potentially go to zero with a call. So I would say even with crypto investing, nothing is as stressful as trying to put like calls on the stock market.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, we live also in very stressful times. So even if you're not investing, you're actually taking a huge amount of risk. I would say you're probably taking an even bigger risk than the people who are investing right now. And this is, of course, not investment advice, right? This is just what I do and what you do,
or anything like that.
But another thing also with meme coins that I often sort of hear people about this, and I hear these stories also. It's like you don't know exactly where the top is, right? Because once a thing like that it goes really high if it goes, but there's no intrinsic value there, right, at all. So you have no idea where you have to get out. And once it turns,
there's no like updates that you're waiting on the roadmap. There's really nothing. So you're kind of like you said originally, it's very much gambling. And it is a little disappointing to see like we've come so far. We got through all these like scams, and then here we are in meme coin season. It's like, wow, did no one learn anything from the last like 2 years of like every lender going bankrupt, like FTX, Luna, like Terra Luna, like everything? We just had so many scams. And then here we are where people are like, yeah, it might even be a scam, and that's fine. Like I've seen it. It's been normalized now. It's like there's so many scams in crypto, like that's fine. We'll just accept that 20% is a scam or something like that. I think that's kind of disappointing that people have become so like calm about that, and that like that's becoming like the face of crypto. Like news articles are like meme coins. And
I think also the phase of the time that we live in, right? I mean, we're really sort of living in the 20s of the past era, right? With this sort of decadence, and people just because they're also thinking like, this happens in Wall Street. Think of the Wolf of Wall Street. Sorry, Wolf, not the. What is the original title?
Wall Street.
Yeah. I'm so into crypto, I forgot the real. But sort of the decadence and the scams that are happening in the financial world. So people are sort of basically used to scamming each other, and that it's sort of part of life almost. And sort of to tie it back to what you said, like you probably also read the Bitcoin Standard with von Safodien Amouz, which is like a classic, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like one passage in the book which always stayed with me, like sort of that encapsulates for me the whole book, and it's like a citation from an older book, and where he sort of it's like one paragraph which sort of describes the fall of Rome, sort of the attributes that happened back then. And it's like
they gave all their gold away for spice, and they crumbled from within.
But also, right, they sort of destroyed the economy by sort of money printing or money devaluation in that sense, money dilution, and basically it forced everybody, the whole economy, to start speculating, and corruption ran wild and scamming ran wild, right? So it's basically exactly the same thing that we're seeing right now, that everybody's forced to go on the risk curve and take excessive risk in order to keep their head above water, and as more and more money put their capital in there, it sort of destroys the real economy, because there's no investment in real things, right? It's sort of
I think the current like stock market is a pretty good analogy for that too. Like you got headlines like every week, 10% of the company laid off, 20% of the company laid off. Google just laid off 75% of their sales ad force and replaced it with AI like a week or two ago. And mortgage rates are at like, all-time highs, and inflation is extremely bad, and food is the highest it's ever been. And it's like, and the stock market just hit 6 all-time highs in the past like several months. And it's like, that is so divorced from reality of what's going on. It's like, and maybe like I'll concede, maybe it's like firing all these people and all this stuff allowed them to like, well, I mean, probably it's a lot of like stock buybacks and various things as well. But
from the money printer.
Yeah. But in terms of like retail investors, like there's no way that everyone's just suddenly investing when they have like the least available excess cash. So yeah, it's I mean, in that sense, I'm expecting like a stock crash sometime soon. It feels like Nvidia's sort of holding up the whole market, because like Nvidia goes down, and then you saw the whole at NASDAQ 100 go down like 7%, and it was like, wow. And then the next day, Nvidia is up, and the NASDAQ's right back where it was before, and it's like, yeah, it's pretty crazy that like they can have that much influence. But
this is exactly the point, right? So the retail people, actually sort of the productive group of society, sort of the pillars of society, they are sort of going down. And in order to sort of keep with the program, they have to invest that little bit that they have left, if they have anything left, into taking crazy risks into meme coins in order to think like, oh, I got some money to make it another year. And that sort of this sort of K-shaped recovery is sort of destroying everything, and only making the elite richer and more corrupt, right?
Yeah, and I mean, part of it comes back to fundamentals too, like being frugal, saving money, like budgeting. I'm still like, I barely know anyone who actually keeps a budget, like a day-to-day expense budget. And it's like these certain like core like personal financial like skills are so important during these times. And 99% of people that I'll talk to, I'll say, you should try to save 30% of your income, invest that. You should budget everything. You should do this. And like almost always I'll get, yeah, but like, I don't know how much of a difference that'll actually make, and so I'm not going to do it. Or it's like, or I don't have time to do that, or whatever it happens to be. And it's like, all right, well, like, how are we, out here at the bar talking about this, and you don't have time to do it? It's like, obviously there is time. It's just people don't feel like it's important enough, or that it actually will make a difference. I'm very confident that it will. It's just that very few people will actually try, and it's not too hard to like. I think the easiest thing is probably to start a budget, but it's like this overwhelming thing to like tackle originally, and people also don't want to like face their spending habits and like see it right in front of them. The old adage is like, anything that you do not track cannot be improved. Like and I'll caveat this, because like, for example, you could eat really healthy and like work out a lot, and you will probably lose weight. But if you're not actually like checking in on the scale, you don't know that you've lost weight unless it's like dramatic, right? So it's hard to actually effectively like change if you're not tracking anything. Because even if you do change, you won't actually know that it had the effect, and then you might just revert back to your old ways because you didn't even notice that anything had actually changed. But maybe you lost 5 pounds, and then you didn't notice because you weren't tracking it, and then you're like, I don't think anything's changed. I'm just going to go back to my old ways. But it's like, but really, you did make progress. You just didn't track it, so you gave up. So it starts with tracking.
Yeah, behavioral economics, like the sort of the breakthroughs in that area, Daniel Kahneman, and but also Dan Ariely, the Israeli guy. I forgot I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he made the same point that you make. Like, you have to visualize it in order to sort of reward yourself, but also to see it, right? That you're actually making improvements. And I think in Africa, he had this sort of experiment with people that if you sort of visualize sort of your savings, because if they're invisible, you sort of are like, whatever. But if you can see the savings that you're actually saving, which also happens with Bitcoin and crypto, of course, then it sort of motivates you to save more. And if you don't see it, it's sort of like you can be doing a good thing, right? Like you say, you can be exercising, but if you can actually see your improvement improve by visualizing it, then it sort of motivates you to do even harder and more, and it sort of
absolutely gives you, and then you can test different things. You could say, well, what if I do this? Let's see how this compares for this week against the other week. You can actually start experimenting and making tests and comparing, whereas you could not do that if you don't have the tracking.
I got it in here.
Sorry?
Dan Ariely.
Dan Ariely.
I have no idea how you say it. It's an interesting guy.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, it's really just down to like how much are you actually going to like focus on your finances. And most people don't really, I would say most people don't even, give like 2% of their like time or thought process to their finances. And it's such a critical thing. It's like, it's one of the most important things. And there's very little prioritization or, emphasis on personal finance. And it's really easy to make like small changes. And then you can sort of see how that impacts. And I mean, going back to like budgeting, the good thing about actually tracking everything is then I could say, okay, well, what would it look like if I changed this? Like if I didn't go to this thing, what will my end result be? And then I can type it in and I can see exactly what that would be. And then more important than that, to like motivate you further, it's not like, oh, I saved $100. It's, oh, I saved $100 that will be invested at this percentage, making me this much money. And it's like, over a certain amount of time, I didn't just save $100. I earned thousands over years and years and years. So it's important to like have that basic understanding, because it's like, oh, $100, like, that's my Amazon Prime subscription. It's like, how it's $100. Like I had a friend who subscribed to like a technical analysis stream, and he paid $60 a month for that. And I said, $60 a month, like that's quite a bit. You could probably just invest that into crypto and not even pay for the thing, and maybe just like make more money just blindly putting it into Bitcoin and Ethereum on a dollar cost average monthly basis. Not that this is financial advice, but it's like, oh, well, $60, that's like a cup of coffee a day or whatever. It's like, okay, but like, you got to think about it, not like what could it like buy otherwise. It's like, how much effort are you, like how many hours are you working? I think the biggest personal finance tip is to visualize everything based in hours worked. Obviously it's different as you make more money, but like if you're not making very much money, you should really be considering like, oh, like I have to work 10 hours to do this thing. Should I do that? It's like, probably not, like unless it's going to benefit you so much more than the 10 hours worth of work. And then you start doing cost benefit analysis for like buying decisions. And then you slowly iterate to a much better place financially. Because, I barely had any money like 5 years ago. And that's when I started taking my finances really seriously. And since then, it's been a drastic change, but it is slow iterations at first, and then it sort of like snowballs. But I believe that anyone can do that if they dedicate to it.
But I explained to my nephews a couple of weeks ago, because they asked me, sort of what is money, and I said, like, basically it's time and energy that is sort of encapsulated in money. And if you give somebody money, you're basically giving them your time, and that's sort of time that you don't have to work or put effort in, and that you can spend as if it is your own, right? So you're basically giving somebody, when you pay somebody, you're giving them your time that they don't have to spend themselves doing something. So, and then just sort of a light bulb went off, and they think, oh yeah, that's a very interesting way to think about money. And then, of course, if you have a good store of value, like gold in the past and perhaps still, and Bitcoin in the future and right now, that is, of course, a much better way to sort of save time than putting it in fiat. And I also, because sort of to tie it back with your research into Tether and USDC and stablecoins, last year, and you're probably fully aware of that, we had sort of these first phases. I think Europe is in phase 1 and probably America too, of CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. And I'm trying to track it closely. And a lot of other countries are also into it. I think like over 70 right now. But basically, these stablecoins are basically sort of CBDCs via the back door, right? They're sort of trying to, I mean, you already sort of mentioned that. How do you, because some people are also thinking like, okay, I'll make a ton of money with the meme coin, and maybe they will, right? And then they put it back into fiat, which sort of makes sense because you have to pay bills, you have to make a living, you have a business or whatever.
Yeah.
But as soon as you do that, you're probably converting it into CBDCs by that time.
Yeah.
Plus hyperinflation, right? So, so these two things are coming together, and how do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I'd love to believe that like CBDCs are this like magical solution, and they haven't even really, I mean, this is what I'll say, like they haven't even really offered many benefits to CBDCs. Like, why do I want CBDCs? Like, they don't really give me a lot to like grab onto. Like, there isn't even, there's not much that would even convince like the average person. Now, I'll say, like, I won't be surprised if they start introducing things like, oh, like you hate doing your taxes, right? Well, we can automatically do your taxes with CBDCs because we'll just take it right out of your account. It's like, is that good or is that bad? And they'll start like pitching these things that are good and bad, but it's like for people who don't really, care about personal finance, which is probably most people, that'll just, oh, well, I don't have to worry about my taxes now. That's convenient. And it's like, yeah, the like, unfortunately, complacency is what's going to be the quickest burner of cash, more so than anything else. And like you said, like if you're not investing, that's probably a bigger risk. That's just complacency. It all comes back to just like not really keeping up with things, not keeping up with the economy, not keeping up with financial news, not keeping up with your own personal finances. I think a lot of it really just comes back to complacency. But I think the people that, well, here's what I'll say. Like with CBDCs, I imagine it's going to be very dystopic. And the only way to really combat that is to continue using crypto and having parallel economies and like, buying things from places that accept cash and like encouraging that. Because, there's some places where it'll be like, oh, you get a 5% discount for paying in cash or whatever. Like, absolutely do that. Encourage that. We want more people patronizing businesses, and you probably get like a discount of some kind. You want to be patronizing things that accept cash, accept crypto. Like, build this parallel economy out so that once CBDCs try to take over, there is still some remnant of society that is like keeping things going, so that, because I'd say maybe once we're past like 80%, it's pretty much like taken over. But if there's still like, 30% of the economy is still running on cash and gold and cryptocurrency, I think that's enough for it to matter. But it gets harder as you're in like bigger countries and you're more spread out. Like here in Canada, it'll probably be very challenging because it's a small population and a very large like land mass. So it's like, there might only be a few places that are close by you that'll actually take crypto or whatever. So yeah, there's going to be like hurdles to this, but definitely wherever you can, as best as you can, as much as you can, you should be patronizing parallel economies. Because
and I think there's also two more things, right? You said complacency and sort of the easy road, right? So it's a road with good intentions that is often, sort of the bad road. And one of the additional benefits of Bitcoin and crypto is that it forces you to sort of like personal hygiene, but also like personal finance.
Yeah.
You have to sort of force yourself to do things that you might not want to do, but you get rewarded as you do them because it improves yourself and your self-esteem, but also it gets you bigger returns.
Yeah.
But it's of course the harder road, and it teaches you self-reliance. And like what you said right now with this sort of parallel economy, if we sort of give it away to the CBDC crowd, at some point, even those people with crypto and this ethos become endangered, right? Because if the group that is sort of complacent is big enough, it sort of surrounds you. And as soon as you're completely surrounded, you can have all the Bitcoin in the world, but it won't save you. So I think this sort of message that Bitcoin and crypto, and that you're also saying, is also put in that additional effort to sort of not only force yourself to sort of learn about Bitcoin and invest in Bitcoin, but also your surroundings, right? You have to reach as many people, teach them, keep repeating the message, teaching them what money is, and sort of, and it becomes easier and easier as sort of the things fall apart. The sort of light bulbs started to go off.
Yeah,
but
as
you have to reach
as Bitcoin gets back to its all-time high, people start to turn their heads back and they go, "Oh wait, what were you saying about Bitcoin again?"
Yeah. but also, like, I have people like that too, right? So why would I invest in Bitcoin? Because it can only go up so much, and Pepe, or whatever other meme coin is out there, it goes out like 10,000% or whatever it is. And then you have to sort of explain to them, but that thing can die any second, or it can flip on a dime, or it's not anything at all, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably like one of the most important things for like people who aren't super financially adept, or they're like newer to the space, to sort of like wrap their heads around. Because it's like, okay, well, if I buy Bitcoin and it goes up to, it goes up 50%, then I'm actually not making a lot of money. It's like, okay, but if we compare that to like the stock market, the average stock market return, like on average stock, is like pretty low. Like it's like under 10%, I'm pretty sure. So Bitcoin, like going up 50%, is definitely like significantly an improvement on that. But like you said, people are getting so desensitized to, oh, this is up 10,000, whatever. And it's like the biggest thing that I'd say to those people is, you're probably going to sell well before that. You're not going to just see the millions of dollars. You won't make $1 million. Like say you invest $100 and it goes up to 10 grand. You'll probably sell at 10 grand, and you won't like hodl through to the $1 million, because like, again, you don't know when that will be. There's no roadmap. There's no like things coming that you have no idea. So it's completely like gambling at that point. And moreover, if people will say, oh, well, if you bought SHIB at this time and you sold at this time, you would make $1 million. And it's like, okay, but keep in mind, if you are that one person who sells, then that's going to take a huge chunk out, and then the next person, and then the next person. So it's not like, well, they say, anyone could have made millions on this. And it's like, yeah, any one person could have, but not many one like singular people, because all the money will be gone by that time. So it's like, by the time you actually do sell, it'll be like crashed, or it'll be zero, or whatever thing that people miss, because they just say, okay, well, it was this price this date and it's this price this date, so if I had bought in here, I could have made $100 million. And it's like, yeah, assuming no one else sold and you're the only person like who has all the tokens. And it's like, that's not going to happen. And psychologically, most people are not going to, again, like hold through thousands upon thousands of percent gains and just be like, I don't care. Like, I don't want the money. I know it's going to go up. Like, any of those mentalities is probably going to make you lose anyways, because then if you know it's going to go up and you really don't, because it's just like a meme coin and there's no fundamentals, then it could also go down at any time. So like, you might hold and then miss the top, and then maybe even lose money once that goes through.
Well,
so
I know actually stories of people who actually made like 10x or sometimes 30x or 40x even, but then it goes down, and then they think, but if I wait, it will go back up again, and
I'll get my 50x again, and then it goes all the way down. It's like,
back where they started.
Yeah, that's the age-old story of crypto, and I think most people learn through failing. Like you have to get in, do that, realize that's not really the way to do it, and then kind of learn from there. The problem is, I would say a lot of people do that, and then they just say, "I hate crypto. I'm never doing this again," and then they're gone. And it's like, okay, well, like if I told someone to invest in stocks and then they only invested in penny stocks and lost a bunch of money, I would be like, well, yeah, you weren't doing it right. You were doing the opposite of what I was basically telling you to do. So of course you're going to not like the results. And yeah, like the face of crypto is all just like memes and like scammy coins and like all this like nonsense. It is nice to see when like, the rare project that is like doing something novel and useful. I've said for a long time, like there's so many ETH killers, but like how many of them are actually doing interesting, novel and innovative things? Not as much. I'm seeing more lately, which is good because that definitely is kind of like signaling the bull market with all this like new narratives, so to speak. But for a long time, I would say for maybe the past 2+ years, the way that I would describe it, like the analogy I would use is blockchain was like a rock climbing wall that we were all scaling together. And then we got to the top and then we just like stood there. We started to spread out. So no one was scaling the wall anymore. There was no progress. We were just building the exact same thing a million different times on every chain. So like, Avalanche, like all Binance Coin, all these different like projects were just rebuilding all the same things that existed on every other project. So we were just like spreading out, but we weren't really like making any like innovation or progress. I'm starting to see that more now where we're starting to actually like scale the wall again. There's like new innovations and projects and things that are popping up that didn't exist like conceptually before, like decentralized physical infrastructure, decentralized science data, all these different things. And I think that's kind of what should be the focus in the face of crypto. But unfortunately, it's all the meme coins and stuff.
The utility value that
Yeah.
sort of the promise that was inherent but never sort of materialized. It's now sort of we're now going to the next level. But
Yeah.
I guess you first have to lay the base and sort of experiment with the foundations to make sure it's sort of really solid.
Yeah, but I imagine that will happen again. Like, in 3-4 years or whatever, we'll hit another like wall, and then all the innovative projects that have happened in the next 2 years will just be replicated on every chain. And then it's just kind of like a war between the chains for like what's doing the best and stuff. And it's like that's good to have competition and things, but I think it's more important to be like creating new, novel, useful things, and like just bringing more value and utility to crypto. So it is really good that I'm starting to see that more and more often lately. And maybe it's because I'm looking for it more, but there's definitely a lot more popping up. Whereas, over the past like year and a half, 2 years, I've seen, someone will bring something to me and I'm like, yeah, that already exists. It existed for like 3-4 years on this other chain or whatever. And it's like, and it's good to create new things on other chains and have, different accessibility, but to just recreate everything 1,000 times is not like progressing the space. And that's what I'm more concerned about and interested in. So yeah, that's kind of like what I've been focused on and following over the past like year or so.
And I know you're sort of a really good educator. I mean, also when I sort of listen to you talk and I know sort of the business that you built, which is all about sort of educating people about all these different facets of the industry or the space. But one of the most challenging areas, I think, is not only sort of explaining people what money is and why it's necessary and why Bitcoin is probably the best place to go.
Yeah.
But also, how do you sort of reach people and bring to understand them that they have to have it in self-custody and not on exchanges, because then you can basically invest in Peppa or
yeah I think there's phases of like understanding crypto. Like the first blockade is like, what even is this? Like, what is mining? What is a blockchain? The easiest way to break that down really quickly is I explain to people like unless you're like an IT professional, you probably don't have a super strong grasp on what the internet actually like entails, like on the back end. Like there's 7 layers, there's DNS servers, IP addresses, all this stuff going on. The average person really has no idea about that, but they know how to use the internet. They know how to like operate on the internet. They know that the internet is valuable to them in their life. That's all they need to know.
Yeah.
Like they don't know how to set up a server or like what a DNS server is doing. They don't need to know the intricacies to use it and know that it's valuable. Even like, closer to home for people who might not use the internet, which probably isn't very many people at this point, like driving a car. I don't need to understand engine combustion to drive a car. I just need to know how to drive it. And I know that driving a car is helpful to me.
Or even when your house is flooded and you need a plumber.
Yeah, exactly.
It
it's like, I don't quite know what you're doing exactly, but I know that I need you to fix the situation. And it's like, that's all people need to understand about blockchain. It's like, well, I don't use something if I don't understand it. It's like, okay, tell me what are the 7 layers of the internet? Like, oh, they don't know. It's like, okay, so do you understand the internet? It's like, well, not necessarily, but I know how to use it. And it's like, okay, so that is an important point. As long as you know how to use it, it's valuable to you. Not that you actually understand how it's like created and the infrastructure and the design technically, because you could point at anything and say, like, do you really know how this works? Like, I know my phone is valuable, but I don't know how to build a phone or how to like repair it and take it apart. And I assume most people don't, unless you're like an enthusiast or you like do that for a living or whatever. But I know that it's valuable, and that's all you really need to know. So as long as you know that something is useful, valuable, adopted, like mass adopted, banks, BlackRock has a Bitcoin ETF, you know that there is intrinsic value. The next step is trying to explain to them, like, they're like, okay, but there's no value because it's just this internet thing. And it's like, okay, well, if we get into that, that's more about understanding like what money is and how value is created beyond just like the simple explanation that like there is electricity cost to mine Bitcoin. So like just the very, very basic, there is absolutely a tangible minimum value that is inputted into creating this. But beyond that, it's like the understanding of like what money is, and it's the accounting, it's the measurement. This is something that is lost on most people. This is actually harder to explain than blockchain, I would argue. It's that money is just a form of measurement.
Yeah.
And what Bitcoin is it's a better measurement tool.
Well,
so
and I think that this I think it was Safedin Ammous, but it could be somebody else. But he compares it to sort of when you start building a house. And
Alan Watts talks about that,
yeah, and then you use a measurement, but it changes in scale, like every.
So he says, well, we've got lumber, we've got concrete, we've got every material needed, but I'm sorry, we ran out of inches on our measuring tape. And they go, well, how do you run out of inches? It's just it's just a form of measurement. It's like, sorry, we ran out of inches. We can't do anything because we ran out of the measurement. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense. And it's like, that's how you have to look at fiat. It's a measuring tape that isn't accurate and it runs out. And it's like, that shouldn't be a useful like, if I gave you the option between the measuring tape that is always correct, has the exact value, or the measuring tape that could change at any time and you don't know what the value is. And it's like, that's fiat and that's cryptocurrency. Well, at least Bitcoin, because we know the exact amount of Bitcoin in circulation. We know there's no fake Bitcoin. We know how much will be printed today. We know how much will be in existence tomorrow. Accuracy adds value because, like, again, for example, like with gold, to get the fair value of your gold, you have to go and like get it appraised and you have to get it checked. And there's a whole cost and process to that. But that's important because you want the most accurately valued value for your gold. But you can skip through all of that when you have Bitcoin and you can just instantly value it. It's the same wherever you are. There's no process to make it to get that valuation. So yeah, that's what I would say. It's like, it's really just a massive improvement technically on measurement of wealth. and then obviously retaining that wealth is the other side of it, the store of value. But yeah, that's the best way that I would explain it, is that like you had a bad measuring like tool, which was fiat, and this is a much better measuring tool. The same way that like you could use like a calculator to try to do your accounting, or you could use an Excel spreadsheet and it's going to be much easier, or you could use AI or use one of these applications and it'll do it instantly. So it's like, yeah, there's different levels of tools and how useful they can be and how accurate they'll be, because I can make a mistake doing it on the calculator. You want the best, most accurate form, and there is value behind accuracy. Again, like even just like with like counterfeit, like because there's no counterfeit Bitcoin, that in and of itself, because of that accuracy, prevents counterfeit and increases the value. So a lot of it comes down to just like accuracy, which or like the integrity of it, which is hard to wrap your head around if all you've known is fiat, which has always been like inaccurate, and like what most people are used to is not that. So then when you tell them like what your daily, like your normal life, like what you're used to, your day-to-day life and the things that you do, it's not like an accurate representation of like wealth or reality. And it's like, first you have to get past that step before you could even see the need for Bitcoin.
Yeah. And it's also like, when you're building a house and suddenly the room is like 10 times bigger or smaller, then you get the wrong amount of wood or whatever it is that you're building. And then you get these misallocations in the economy, or in this case, when you're building a house. But also like the sense of value, right? If your measuring tape suddenly becomes 10 times bigger, then you think, oh, I live in a mansion, right? Even though your house is still the same shape, or maybe even getting smaller, and the unit of account is getting bigger. So it's a really sneaky way also to sort of fool people. And what you said about people not being aware of how things are built and how difficult some things to build are. You probably also know Matt Ridley, and he had this sort of famous explanation of a pencil, right? A pencil looks so simple to make, but when you sort of understand how much effort and how many different industries and how many different professions and even science is involved in sort of mass producing these pencils that we use and take for granted, you sort of become aware of how vulnerable, but also how dependent you are on sort of this system to provide everything.
And I think that's a natural progression of like civilization too. Like as civilization progresses, you get more and more specialization, where it's like eventually everything will just be so ridiculously specialized. But if we were ever to like regress, or like there's like a blackout, or whatever, we wouldn't even be able to do the most basic things. Like no one would be able to create a phone. You'd need like thousands of people all collaborating together, and it would be so challenging to do without factories, the internet, etc. So it's really a combination of all these things together that actually builds out these things that we think are so simple, and it's like most people don't really understand most things, like myself included. Like I could not like build a light bulb to fix my light bulb. I just need to get the light bulb and twist it in. And it's like, that's easy enough. But if I was tasked with building the light bulb to then replace, it's like, I would not be able to do that. Like even if I was following a tutorial, like I don't think I would have the tools and the means and
the materials.
To actually just build a light bulb. Even if it was extremely inexpensive, it would be extremely challenging to do.
And then this sort of also ties back into what you said earlier, to sort of create this parallel economy and to keep it healthy and growing and to reach new people, because this parallel economy or community needs to be big enough in order to provide all these things and to keep that knowledge there.
We need the light bulb maker to be accepting crypto as well, right? We need everyone to be a part of that. Otherwise it falls apart, because if everyone doing crypto, like we could have a 20% of the economy with everyone doing crypto, but if it's only the buyers or it's only the sellers, then you're still at odds, because if no one's buying, then you're not going to accept crypto. And if no one's selling, then you have nothing to buy with your crypto. So it has to be like both sides all collaborating.
And then that's sort of my final question, and then we can sort of wrap it up. But I'm really enjoying it. So one of the other things that people often say even within the Bitcoin community, even the maxis say that is like, I'm gonna save it, like I'm gonna store it all, like it will be sort of my pension fund or my rainy day fund, or it's only go up, and they're sort of right about that. But as we are sort of talking about this, it shows that it's also very important to use it as a medium of exchange, right? To actually use your Bitcoin and to spend it,
Yeah, that's
or
a great
another
point.
crypto like Litecoin or whatever. But you need something that is you need a sort of parallel financial system that needs to be built and improved upon, and to stress test, and people to accept it as a medium of exchange. Otherwise, you will be completely dependent on a CBDC or a fiat system in order to make expenses and pay for things, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a great point that like it's all of the things, You can't just like hold and not ever use it, because how does someone know that you even support crypto if you're not using it? How do like, you have to also participate. I I know some people are just going to be like, well, like, I don't want to go through all that effort, and it's like, I just want to invest and call it a day. And it's like, well, like, adoption will increase the value. So like, to some degree, if you're spending your crypto, I mean, you should figure out how to do that, so that, like, if you want to exit without like selling, if you could just like spend it, that's a great way to like to have exit liquidity, if you can find a way to spend it or withdraw it from a crypto ATM or whatever it happens to be. At least understanding your avenues to get in and out is pretty important. Yeah, spending is definitely going to increase the value. Plus, if you want to be able to spend your crypto in your pension, you have to spend it now, so that those people have the money to accept the crypto to then, continue doing that. Because it's not like, if everyone just puts money in their retirement fund, in 100 years, everyone's going to start accepting that. It's like, no, we have to spend it. Otherwise, people can't accept it if we're not spending it. So it's a give and take, and everyone
But
has to kind of like actually participate in the system, versus just holding. And I'm not saying you can't just hold. I'm saying, if you want to get to that eventual reality where it's like crypto is mass adopted, everyone's using it, and you don't want to just let CBDCs take over, the best way to fight that narrative is to be invested in crypto and spending it.
and that,
And
and
I
that
try to spend it like fairly often. I want to like, continue to use avenues to be able to get my money out and make sure that they still work, and like, just like a maintenance check, kind of like make sure
yeah.
everything's still working well. The ways that I would have to get out still work. And taking a little bit of profit is never a bad thing. It's a good way to do it, and not really affect your current level of income. If crypto goes up a bunch, I might buy a couple things that I've been thinking about buying, because it's like,
Well,
why not?
and that's also interesting, because at that very moment you see that your purchasing power actually improved
Yeah,
upon everybody else who have to spend more on less, and you actually spend to have less on more, right? So it
exactly.
also showcases that it was a good investment. And sort of this last bit also shows you that it probably won't be just alone Bitcoin, right? There's also use cases for
For sure.
other coins, because the fees on Bitcoin will rise as Bitcoin becomes more valuable, which also becomes sort of an impediment for people with lower incomes to actually use Bitcoin as a spending vehicle, right? Because they simply can't afford the fees.
Yeah, and I'll say on that, people who look at Bitcoin as like digital cash will probably be disappointed, because while it was sort of set out to be that, like, it's not that today. It's really digital gold. And I think the fees going up really just reflects digital gold, because even though the fees are fairly high, it's still significantly cheaper to send Bitcoin than it is to send gold. And it's safer
Yeah.
and faster, and all of the things. So if I wanted to sell my gold, it's a cumbersome process, and I got to get it. I have to spend a bunch of money to get it like verified if I want the best price. Or I could take a huge loss and go to like cash for gold and just like do it there. But like, why would you do that, right? So Bitcoin is really digital gold in that sense. But yeah, I think having like Dash or Litecoin or whatever to like buy things as you need to, like, it's definitely useful. And everyone should try it. I actually think it's more fun buying things with crypto, even though it's a little bit more cumbersome. Like, it takes a little bit more effort. It's kind of like, it's fun to see that, like, oh, this like fake internet money actually works. I can actually buy things, and it actually works. So I think that's also very important to like see that and realize that in your own life. I don't think enough people actually like spend crypto to like fully understand it. Plus, it also shows you like how it's different from like stocks, because I can't just take my stock and like take a little piece of it and spend it. It's like, but that's kind of what you can do with cryptocurrency. So,
or you're painting, like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think it's much more effective to actually like live that and experience that, because then you really understand why it's valuable. Because yeah, I've tried going and I withdrew a stock from the bank. It was very, very challenging. And then I went to my other bank and I deposited the stock, and they didn't even know what to do. They were like, a stock? Like, how do you have a paper stock? And I had to schedule an appointment to come back another day, and it took an hour, and we went through all these forms, and it was insane just to like withdraw a stock, deposit a stock. I cannot imagine how cumbersome that would have been like 50 years ago. But yeah, it's crazy when you actually do that exercise, which I should have like recorded it and done like a video. But it really shows you like how inefficient the original like stock market buying process is. And it's like, yeah, and I can't take a part of that and spend it or do anything. So something like crypto is a complete next step in that evolution. So yeah, I mean, if people actually live that through, they'll see that.
And I think Raoul Paul also has a similar story, but I think we should also get you back on the show, because you're probably also aware of the Great Taking from Webb, David Webb. Yeah, and that sort of also ties into what you just said, but that's like a whole different episode, of course.
Yeah.
But I want to raise one final thing, and that's sort of also connected to this, and that's I think it was you who posted it, but I'm not sure. It could have been somebody else. But that Coinbase, in order to make transactions, you need to have like a Coinbase account for them to sort of accept a Bitcoin payment, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was you, right? That shared that.
That might have been me, but I do know that's the case. Like, I hate that there's like certain things like
gatekeepers,
like PayPal and all that kind of stuff, where it's like, oh, well, you can store your crypto with us, but we'll decide if you could, where you can spend it and all these different things. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying originally, that like it's a lot of centralization by these like big institutions that are taking something decentralized and centralizing it just by virtue of owning it and like holding it and controlling it on other people's behalf. So I would say CBDCs are like that, and then turning it up like 1,000, which is why I think it's really easy to just point to like, PayPal or like stock exchanges that sell crypto, but not as a stock, like Robinhood and stuff, where it's like, you don't get any like benefits from doing that. And you don't actually have the crypto. So it's like the worst of both situations. I think those are perfect examples of like why CBDCs will not be good. Beyond, I mean, like, we didn't even dive into like, like they'll probably have ESG scores, and they'll probably like, you went on a trip this year, or you're trying to book your other trip. It's like, sorry, your ESG score is too high. You cannot book the second trip. Or, you've driven too much, like you cannot fill up your car with gas. And it's like, only then would people realize, oh, like we've gone too far. But by then there's no way back from that. Like, are we really going to start seeing gas stations that only accept Bitcoin? Like, probably not. So we'd have to build that like now before that happens.
And then like, you're from Canada, and everybody knows the trucker situation that happened there. And it seems that Trudeau finally is sort of getting some heat.
So they ruled that it was like that he shouldn't have been able to do that. And yeah, they're trying to appeal it though, but hopefully that stays the way that it was, because yeah, it was absolutely like absurd that like, you know, donating $50 of Bitcoin to someone would like get your account blacklisted off of the exchange. But that's just another reason why you don't leave your crypto on exchanges or like with PayPal, etc. Because if push comes to shove, if the government decides to, they can, you know, enforce that. But with a personal wallet, there's nothing that they can do. Like,
Yeah.
and it's important to understand that. And people say, oh, well, you know, I live here and that can never happen here. And da, 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 da. It's like, well, I mean, governments are temporary and laws are temporary. They can change at any time and they can be retroactive. Like, don't wait for that to happen.
Like Jeff Booth always says, they're very sensitive to money.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, and you really don't know when things are going to happen. And all of these things also apply to other facets of life, like privacy. Your privacy will be lost if you're complacent and you don't understand, you know, what's tracking you and what apps you're allowing and what permissions you allow. It goes across like every facet of life. So it's really just an overall ethos that is better for you, like in all facets, if you apply these sort of like values across like other things. Like privacy is a really obvious one to point to. Like, for example, on my phone, I have like the camera blocked on the back and on the front with like a little webcam blocker. And you know, simple little things is better for my privacy, but it doesn't really cost me much money or like much effort or time. But then when you start getting into like, well, I go through all my permissions on my phone and all these different things, it's like, yeah, that takes more time and effort. And you might have to like make sacrifices. If you don't want to have like GPS tracking, it's going to be harder to order an Uber. So there's always like give and take, but like using crypto is going to be a little bit more cumbersome, but it's better for your finances. You know, turning off my location data is better for my privacy, but it's worse for my convenience. A lot of it is always going to be a trade between convenience and you know, like, and like productivity and things like that, and taking more responsibility as well. That's always part of it. Like, it takes more responsibility for me to do all this with my privacy. It takes more responsibility for me to manage my personal finance as well. So it's really comes back to those core values, and they can apply across every facet of life. It's not just crypto. It's pretty much everything. I think a lot of people tend to get into the crypto space and then they start exploring privacy and all these other things. So I think it's a really good like entry point into a lot of these really good values that people should be starting to like build and learn. But the problem is most people don't understand or know of the issue to then deal with it. Because like, if I talk to my parents, for example, they really don't want to be spied on, and they want their privacy very much so, where they don't want to have like they're not super interested in like having like smart devices and all these things, because it's like, oh, that might like invade my privacy. It's like, okay, well, you don't want that, but then if I like tell you about all the stuff on your phone tracking you, it's like, I can't be bothered with that. It's like, okay, well, it's interesting, like, because the values don't fully match up, but a lot of it'll just come down to convenience. Trying to get my friends to use a Signal, like an encrypted, fully encrypted, open source, end-to-end encrypted messenger platform, is like the most challenging thing to get people to switch to. So it really just shows it's like, it's hard to have good finance. It's hard to live a private life, but it is beneficial to you. And that's plain to see. So I think that's kind of the thing that I will leave off on, is that I think it's always going to take more to achieve, but it's going to benefit you in the long run tenfold.
I think that's sort of the core value, right, of Bitcoin, is you have to put in the effort, but when you put in the effort, you get the growth, like the personal growth, but also your finance growth. Basically, you grow on every level at the same time, and it sort of opens your eyes to all these other issues that you also have to take responsibility for. And of course, it's a lot, and people are on different scales as they go along that path. But the other path is the path of easy access, easy everything, convenience, like you say. And that eventually leads downhill and into a very dystopian society with a single point of failure and a single group of people who will take advantage of everyone else if we sort of keep going down that road.
Yeah, and it'll be across everything, right? Like we're just talking about crypto and finance and now a little bit about privacy, but you know, you use Netflix and you like your Netflix and you like watching your movies, and then one day they decide like, oh well, you know, you said this or did this, so you're not allowed to use Netflix anymore. And you're like, okay, well, like how do I watch the movies that I want? It's like, oh well, you didn't take all the challenge, like the hard route of, you know, buying them or torrenting them and having a massive offline collection for if this ever were to happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, and now you don't get to watch movies unless you go and use someone else's or whatever, and then they get banned, and then they're in the same situation. So it's like, it's always going to take more effort up front to do what I would say is like the better path, or like the right path. But I don't want to say like there's a right and a wrong way. I would just say that there's like a way that's better for you, more beneficial for you personally, in a way that's easier, and a way that's like better. I guess easy versus better, but like the better is obviously going to be more challenging.
And also, you know, the challenge, as you do it, they become easier, right? And as you don't do it, they become harder, and then you shy away, and then it becomes harder, and you know,
that's a great point.
Vicious cycle backwards.
Yeah, you avoid learning about Bitcoin, and then everyone's using Bitcoin, and you're like, what is going on? Like, I don't understand any of this, and it's even making me more frustrated. And so I'm just going to use cash, and I'm just going to keep using cash because it's so confusing, and I'm so far behind. It's like, no, you're not too far behind. That's like saying like, oh, like I don't need to learn about the internet because like it's confusing, and eventually it'll figure itself out. It's like, no, you're gonna have to learn about the internet to like or learn how to drive a car. So you can't just put it off forever, because eventually you're gonna need to drive somewhere, and you're not going to have a car or a license to be able to do it. And only then are you going to be like, oh, I screwed up, and now I have to start the process very late. So to avoid doing that, I would say, you know, learn about these things now and you don't even have to necessarily invest if you're like skeptical, you think it's a scam or something. I would just say, just like maybe learn about it, but learning about it might not be enough. I would say like try to like use platforms, even like free platforms or social platforms, for example. Like that's how I got started. And I thought for a long time, I thought blockchain social media was going to be the way that we would get mass adoption. But that's sort of like, it's kind of like died down a little bit. I think it's going to come back in the bull run, because naturally that's kind of how it ebbs and flows with the crypto market. But I don't think that's the route to mass adoption necessarily. But I do think it's a great way for people who are skeptical to get involved. Find ways for you to like get cryptocurrency for free, or use a platform that has blockchain integrated somehow, or some way that you're using the technology, and then you can like test it out and understand it. It's sort of like, you know, when my dad taught me how to use a car before I got my license, I had to learn from someone and figure it out a little bit and test it. And then I was like, okay, I definitely want to drive. I want to have a license. I want to have a car, but I wouldn't really be able to like figure that out until I actually get using the car. And maybe I'd figure it out late when I need the car and don't have it, and then I start the process. But you don't want to be in that situation. Obviously, you want to be ahead of that and be prepared for whatever is to come.
Yeah, you have to have skin in the game in order to sort of get knowledge and get educated. And you have to you know, you have to lose sometimes also to sort of remember stuff and to learn.
Yeah, the best lessons are hard learned. So like me with my 100,000 Dogecoin on Cryptopia, and then they went bankrupt, and I did not get that out. I put $300 in, and it would have been worth 100,000 at the peak.
Yeah, or sort of when you use a certain wallet and you change your phone before making sure that you can sort of transfer those funds from one phone to another. You know, then, that kind of stuff can be very educational.
You definitely you'll definitely learn the hard way, but ideally, you know, we're far into it enough, and if people, you know, watch things like this and other crypto educators, they'll at least hopefully learn these lessons without having to learn them the hard way from our experience. So hopefully that will save some people some money out there. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think people should try to test things out and get involved with crypto, because I mean, it's like, if you were early days in the internet and you're like, just give it a try, like,
Yeah.
and they're like, I don't know what this weird internet thing is. It's like, just try it, just see if you like it, like send an email, just test it out. And it's like, oh wow, this is actually pretty useful. And it's like, yeah, and the people who tried it the earliest were, able to like, figure it out and make a lot of money doing it, starting a website, whatever. So yeah, obviously, like the earlier you learn it, it's going to be beneficial to you, and it's not a huge time investment. I do understand that like it is like confusing and it's like this big thing to tackle at first, but once you kind of just like get in there and start using it, it's like the internet, where it's like, yes, it is this huge thing that is very complex, but if you just know how to navigate it, you'll see pretty quickly the value.
And it's also a lot of fun, right? Tinkering about and
Yeah.
sort of learning, because you're sort of like a pioneer in
Yeah,
in a
100%.
strange landscape or strange world. And there's a great community built around it, right? I mean, it's not only scams. Scams are also part of it, but there's also like a lot of idealists and interesting people, tech innovators, right? You got a lot of good people who are doing great work, like yourself. So I think we should end on that positive note. And I would love to have you back to do like a whole show on sort of CBDCs and
Yeah, we could do that.
and the great taking. And yeah, well, that's definitely worth a whole show in itself. And I would love to also sort of dig a little bit deeper in your experiences in Canada and how things are there. I think people would love to know that from people who actually live there. So yeah, we should do another show soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for being on. I had a great time, and I hope everybody listening, that they learned something and learn to do the hard way is more profitable in the long run than do it the easy way, and eventually perhaps lose everything.
Yeah. And I'll say, like, I probably go a lot further than most people, like with, my phone and everything. But, each degree of effort has, 5 to 10x the output of benefit, I would argue. So it's definitely worth every little amount of thing that you do extra is going to pay back in a great amount in the future. And you don't want to wait until, until you're struggling with your finances or until your phone gets hacked or whatever. You don't want to wait until then to start making improvements. You don't want to wait till your car has a problem on the side of the road to, go in for a maintenance check. You want to go in for the maintenance check before that, or, have a roadside assistance set up or whatever. So preparing for the future is always beneficial. And I highly recommend everyone do it.
And before we sort of end, people can find you, of course, on Twitter. I'll show your account right here. It is Kotzi Business, and all your links are over there. Is there any project that you want to highlight or anything else that you're working on that you want to sort of tell people about?
No, just that, look out for my cost of centralization video fairly soon. I've finally managed to find the best AI video editor ever. So hopefully I'll be making a lot more videos fairly soon. So stay tuned for that.
Awesome. So with that, we'll say goodbye and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.